Hello, strangers. But it's funny, because you look kind of familiar. Happy holidays, friends. My gift might be a little late, but I hope you like it all the same, because there's no returns. This is Story 100. I had decided to try something new. That's where this all started. I'd moved for work and had been living in this new town for about a year. I was comfortable with the stores, gym, and places to go in my town. Every so often, though, a friend or coworker would say they'd tried a restaurant that was really good, or gone to a movie and had the theater nearly all to themselves. Whenever I'd ask where, the town next to ours, 20 minutes or so away, inevitably came up. I'd never ventured out there, not in all the time I'd lived in the area. I kept meaning to check it out, and one Saturday, I finally did. It was weird driving past the usual exit signs and beyond to a place I hadn't been. I hadn't had to rely on my phone's map feature in a while, but now I was scouring exits, looking for one that was obviously neighboring town over here. I made it into the town, drove around for a while before I finally found the movie theater. It was a little run down looking, but they were showing current movies, and sure enough, I had the theater nearly all to myself and my jumbo tub of popcorn. Same story with the sushi restaurant I'd been told was amazing. The food was good, the place a little shabby, and it was very nearly completely empty. I must not have been hitting places on the town's main drag. Even the mall I visited had the eerie appearance of being a little run down. It was still fully open and stocked up to date, yet where were the people? It too had a dull sort of feeling, like a room that's been closed off, and no one's walked through it to send the microscopic dust in the air swirling, giving you that sense of movement. This place was still. The piped-in, tinny music echoed, too quiet to make up for it. I remember very clearly walking through a department store. I passed a wall of mirrors. The way they were positioned made the store appear twice as large. This didn't help the lonely feeling. In the mirror, the total of people I saw doubled to just me and my reflection. Worse, they were a little warped. It gave sort of a funhouse stretched appearance. Looking at it too long left me with a floaty, spinny feeling I now associate with vertigo. All in all, 0 out of 10 ambiance. Nothing felt welcoming. In fact, the more I walked around that town, the more stores I entered, I got the feeling I was in the wrong somehow. Why wouldn't there be people shopping? Was there some notice, some strike going on amidst the cheerful consumers of this town, and I was an out-of-town scab drawing their ire? Was there a known killer on the loose, and I was out here, ambling around, the only kid who didn't get the memo about staying indoors at home? The uneasy feeling seasoned everything. It made the entire venture, the entire day trip, taste like a mistake. But I am a stubborn man. I've been dragging my feet on visiting this town for a year. I wasn't going to run out before I hit the last place I'd heard about, a local smoothie shack that served any kind of fruit mix-in you could want, in sizes up to 64 ounces. I am a sucker for a smoothie. If nothing else, I was going to get my hands on the 64-ounce insulated jug, a souvenir for my trouble that could double as a trophy. I survived a liminal space and drank my weight in nectarines. The only problem, though, was finding it. I was smarter this time. I remembered to use my phone and set a map location before driving, but the reception in this town sucked. I had maybe 2 bars max. The second problem was the name of the place. Turns out, there were a few local smoothie joints, and I couldn't quite remember what the coworker said it was called. I chose one that seemed right and set off driving. It was winter, gray skies at 6 p.m., already getting dark. It may have been the weird alien feeling of the place, or it may have been the lack of cellular signal. My map, though, it just kept getting confused. It would show me the next turn was the one I should take. I'd take it, and then it would flicker, load, and give me the dreaded rerouting rebuke. I was so distracted I didn't realize when I left the more commercial side of town, picketed with neon signs with store names, and slipped into more residential areas. I just looked up and suddenly I was driving through a suburb, a run-down, empty one. Right there and then I decided, nuts to this. I spotted a space on the side of the street to park. I was going to call my coworker, get the smoothie shop name, get my smoothie, and never come back to this place. It was just too weird. And feeling like you're doing something wrong all day just by walking around is an awful, nervy feeling. So I pulled over. I had just grabbed my phone when my driver's side door opened. I had an older car. It didn't automatically lock when you started driving. I'd not locked it when I'd taken off from the last parking lot, and so the doors remained unlocked. I turned, and the left side of my face exploded. First, a dull thwack sound, then pain, radiating, burning pain. My left eye felt like it was going to pop from the sudden pressure. Another thud. This one connected with my nose, sending a spurt of copper into the smells of my car. Hands were roughly pulling at my seatbelt, pulling at me. I was so stunned I didn't even drop my phone. I froze, allowing the men to pull me from my car and dump me on the ground. I started to look up, and then saw, then felt, a boot crash into my side, right into my left hip. God, that pain stole my breath, stole any scream or cry for help I was building. My lips felt wet. Is my nose bleeding? That one thought sort of cut through all the fog. While this had happened all in seconds, my dozy, frozen brain was stretching them out, making things seem slow and dreamlike, which nightmares are dreams too. I started to look up again, and now I heard someone speak.
Stay on the ground.
It was a low voice, somewhere between a lecture and a shout. Another couple of voices joined in, muddling so all I could pick out were get, stupid, car, wallet, and phone. There was another hand on mine, ripping my phone from me. Out of reflex, I gripped harder, not letting it go. That just earned me another kick, this time someone from behind me. It knocked me forward, my head banging into the still open driver's side door. They literally pulled me out of my car and dumped me right there, like a cat just knocks something off a shelf. Another hand was now digging at me, trying my pockets for my wallet. I'd stuffed it into the center console when I'd started driving. It was bulky enough I wouldn't try sitting on it to drive, but at this point they had my phone and were primed to kick, hit, or maybe worse, if I tried yelling for help. At least my dumb brain had gotten the memo early, clear enough. Stay where I was dropped. My head was spinning, but I resolved to keep still. I thought, right before another hand grabbed into my hair and pulled me up by the back of my head. I couldn't help but cry out then. It hurt like fire. The person was shaking me like a dog with a toy. It was that same low voice that had told me to stay on the ground. Now they held me in a pained backwards arch as he demanded my wallet, demanded my keys, demanded, did I have a watch? Don't look at him. On this last, I heard another sound that sent terror through me, hard enough to make me shake. The shh of a knife opening behind me. With my head pulled back, I was all too aware of how exposed my throat was. Suddenly, my dumb brain decided to be Johnny on the spot. It showed me a complete mental picture of them slicing my throat clean through, suddenly wearing a red, wet bib over the no longer novelty shirt I wore, one that said Virginia is for lovers. And other types too, I thought, and almost laughed. It was insane, but I was facing my possible death, and my mind had gone from a dozy bear coming out of hibernation to a third-rate comedian bombing on new material. You gotta laugh at that kind of thing, right? The insane urge to cackle directly into the night while some group of men killed me led me into a refrain my brain began to chant, only rearranging the words, but repeating the same ones over and over. For the love of God, please don't let this happen. Please God, help, please, for the love of... Laughter. I thought, for one moment, that my crazy urge to laugh had somehow escaped my mouth and become real, while my brain chanted its gush of a prayer. But this wasn't my laugh. It wasn't my laugh filtered heavily by the damage to my nose or by the strained position of my vocal cords either. This was a low, deep chuckle. My second thought was that it came from the men around me. Was this funny to them? Right on cue, I heard the man holding my head back curse.
Who's there?
More murmuring from the small crowd of men, agreeing with their leader, wondering who, indeed, was there. So, the laughter wasn't coming from them. And it grew. It skipped all across the stage and graduated from a chuckle to a full-on laugh. The voice was deep but clear. So clear. And at this higher volume, I realized I couldn't figure out what direction it was coming from. It must have been where I am, I thought. Sprawled on the ground between my driver's side door and my open car, sound must have been bouncing off something, echoing around me. But then, all the men around me were looking around, as though they, not penned into an echo chamber like I was, well, they couldn't place the direction of this laughter either. The knife man behind me was loosening his grip.
Who's laughing? You think this is funny? I'll show you some real jokes.
But the confidence he had was loosening too. I could tell from how his voice sounded behind me, hitting my left ear, then my right, that he too had begun looking around. Whoever was laughing got even louder. It wasn't yelling. It was as if someone had reached over and cranked up the volume on a pricey sound system. And now, wait, what was that? Another voice. Also deep, also male, but distinctly different from the first. It joined in on the laughter, amplifying and spreading the sound out like paint being spilled. All at once, my head was released. I'd had my hands out in front of me, so I was able to spare bashing my face into the car door again. I laid still, terrified the hand would return, or maybe the knife would be plunged into my back instead. The man behind me, the knife man, stepped back and began to yell out. But the jig was up. It wasn't confidence in his voice, but confusion, giving way to a voice crack of nerve. All the men around me began turning, stepping away from the car in one direction only to take a step back, then go in a different direction. They couldn't place the direction of either source of laughter, which had now been joined by more. There were at least 2 more distinct voices who also laughed, full belly laughter, like their sound was a weapon they were hurling at the men. The voices laughing grew in number and grew louder and louder. I could sense that the knife man was shouting back at them, but I couldn't make out a word. The others were making sounds too. I could hear that much, but not what they said. But going off tone alone, they were spooked as I was. Small wonder that finally, one of them decided to risk incurring their leader, the knife man's, wrath. I felt the reverb of someone running away. A few other tremors in the ground against which my cheek was pressed, as a few of the other men appeared inspired and began to follow. The knife man stepped directly onto my back. This was another lancing pain, but one he seemed to have caused incidentally, and over to the cluster of men beyond my car door, sounding angry, trying to bully his formerly loyal crew into staying put. As though this was the best joke they'd heard yet, the laughter coming from around us swelled. Now I could hear nothing but joyful, gleeful laughter. I couldn't tell how many voices made up the wall of sound, only that, as with the volume, they had multiplied again. They stole the air. I had that weird sensation I was breathing their laughter like oxygen, because it was all there was to breathe. There was no room left for crickets, for a car backfiring, and no room now for the deflated group of men who had so boldly ripped me from my car, from my nice, boring, buttoned-down suburban excursion. How quickly had I gone from the largest concern in my life being getting a smoothie, to picturing my own death so vividly I could feel the seam in my neck where I knew a knife would be drug, opening it like a package and ending my life. To this. A confusing wall of mirth and delight, blotting out everything else like a lunar eclipse. The sound had now reached a point where I felt it vibrating through me. It didn't hurt my ears the way a concert would, but I could feel it quaking through me. Or I'm shaking in fear. That was more likely. And I wasn't the only one. At this, the crew had decided enough was enough. From my peripheral vision, I saw, maybe sensed, movement. Another departure. Another followed. Then the final 3, including the one I'd dubbed the ringleader, the knife man. I saw him go. And for all of his previous bravado, my impression was that of a child speeding down an unlit hallway at night, hoping to make it to the bathroom without getting caught by the monsters that lived in the dark. This left me swelling and aching on the ground in the company of the unseen laughing men. I couldn't sense where they were. As I slowly began to get up, I still couldn't, nor could I see movement. What I could sense was that they no longer sent shockwaves out. It was like they were fading, maybe fading for following the men who'd run away. I was up on my knees, finally, resolving to take slow, measured movements until I got home. I had no idea what all damage had been done to me, and it sounded like the danger had, for the moment, departed into the night. Which was more dangerous, the carjackers or the laughing men in the dark? I didn't know. And then, as I kneeled there, from in front of my car door came my phone. Its skitter slid over the ground like someone had slid it over to me, case side down, thank God. It bumped into my right knee and stopped there. I stared at it stupidly, all come over with tremors again. One of the laughing men hadn't followed the carjackers. They had stuck around, and without his laughter, I didn't realize he was even there. Why had he hung back? I was frozen all over again. I very clearly thought, I cheated death once. Once is more than most people get. Crazy how quickly you can resign yourself to dying. I kneeled, head bowed, and waited for someone to come striding in from the front of my car to grab me and a voice, low and close enough to tickle, spoke into my ear from behind me. Go. The breath was hot, near steam from a kettle hot. I jerked my head forward, whipping around to see. Nothing. No one. The street behind me had returned to that Roanoke loneliness, with only the signs that people had been there to meet my gaze. As with the mall, the restaurant, and the movie theater, the street was empty. No more thoughts. My brain had been warped, my sense of time passing pulled like stretched taffy. The whole thing took maybe 2 or 3 minutes, feeling like years for the level of perfect 4K HD ultra clarity in which I remembered every detail. But getting out of there, grabbing my phone, getting back into my car, and parking back at my house, it was as though I'd been teleported. I remember nothing about it. The film in my brain goes from kneeling on the ground to hearing that steady, low voice, to me sitting in my car in my driveway, hands gripped on the steering wheel so hard they ached. I didn't go to the police. I never saw a face. I didn't even know there were 6 of them until they had already run away. That didn't give me much to ID them. And given the weird-ass vibe of the town, how sure was I that they even had cops, and not just some shabby-looking police station standing empty? The place felt unreal, like I'd walked through a town made of dollhouses. Aside from a few cashier utility players, there'd been no one on the sidewalks. I'd seen no birds. It had felt like I was doing wrong just being there, because living things shouldn't be there. And third, I could not explain why 6 men who had at least a knife among them, the element of surprise, and every opportunity to kill me, hadn't. I mean, I know why, but I can't explain it. Like with the town, trying to, even thinking about trying to, it feels like I'm doing something wrong or not allowed. Someone's, from how many there were, saved my life that day. Odd as it sounds, examining it, trying to figure out how they did it, feels ungrateful. And wasn't I the one on my knees, begging God above to save me? And I was saved, wasn't I? That's enough, I think. In this life, I have had the opportunity to come near to death more than a couple times. And I think if you're aware enough, most of us have. And isn't it funny how often you look back in hindsight and realize how sketchy, how scary something was, and how, statistically, it shouldn't have gone in your favor. Not at all. And yet, it does. Is it just pure luck? Or is luck something that we call it when something unseen is looking out for us? I think I prefer that. And this holiday season, I hope all of you are looked out for. Merry Christmas, my strangers. If you'd like to get in touch or share a story from your past, email and socials are on the screen and in the description. Liking, commenting, and/or sharing this video feeds some sort of algorithm monster that lives under YouTube's bed. So they say. And otherwise, I'll see you again soon. Stay strange, stay safe, and take care, strangers.